Hello and welcome to the Cause-Oriented Efficiency Podcast. This is your host, David Blaine. I'm also the author of Cause-Oriented Efficiency, the book, which you can now download in digital form at coefficiency.org. I would say that in this episode, and since it is the first episode, it's the intro to what this podcast will be about. And I'm hoping that what comes from this is more or less a ongoing description of my latest ideas about cause-oriented efficiency, as well as interesting solutions that may have come up, as well as causes, cases, and all sorts of information about cause-oriented efficiency. So today what we'll talk about is a little bit about what it is, the project Cause-Oriented Efficiency. We'll talk about the purpose. We'll talk about the premise, why we need this in our society. And we'll cover a couple of facts regarding how this is all coming together. We'll talk about why we need this idea, touch on the history of the idea, and also we will touch on the underlying assumption and probably continue to talk about some later around the ideas of philosophy. So today I'd like to start by introducing the subject, which is cause-oriented efficiency as a way of thinking. It's basically trying to simplify the information gap using a transparent methodology for a more informed populace. And that is not easy to say in one breath, but I wish I had a better elevator pitch version of this whole idea. But essentially what it is a tool that you can use, we'll say when it's further down the road a good bit and has been practiced a lot more. It's a tool where you can simplify complex information in order to understand the best solutions for a given problem. And let's jump into sort of what the premise is, and that will explain it further. And so the premise of the book and the idea as a whole is just that there's a lot of complex information out there, and we live in a very fortunate environment now where we can have free access to a multitude of information. And among that information is somewhat extremely complex forms of information. Now, information by itself is sort of static, right? Wikipedia is a good example of that. It's a static source of information that is helpful when you need to quickly reference something. But what I've identified in this book and what I've identified in real life too is the relationship between the cause and what I'm calling the cause and the solution relationship. So basically a cause would be synonymous with a problem or something that has not been fixed or needs to be fixed. And the reason I decided to call it cause was mostly because I wanted it to be associated with the way we treat human endeavors. If we talk about civil rights or something like that, it would be a cause for humanity, something that we can all get behind, and that we need to work together to find a solution for. So cause-oriented efficiency is efficiency, but it is cause-oriented, basically saying that it's a human problem-oriented tool. And the way it works is that it will, once you apply this tool to a given problem or cause, it will shorten the complexity gap. So it bridges the gap between what is complex about that information and what you can easily understand. So that is a huge benefit when you are, let's say, getting used to a new concept. In the book, I talk about climate change. And one of the things about climate change is there's not just one solution to getting things back in order. And so for the cause, we have outlined, or I have outlined, what exactly the cause is, why it's an important matter to discuss, and why we need to resolve it, and what are the effects if we don't, the consequences of not doing that. So within the cause, the first part of the structure is that you have the top level, which would be the cause. And so after that, underneath it would be the solutions, and maybe we have a dozen solutions. One of those, which I discuss in the book as an example, is solar panels. So solar panels would be one of the solutions, and you could kind of drill down and find all these different solutions and discuss all of them. But for the sake of what cause-oriented efficiency does well is that during the process of understanding the solution, what we do very thoroughly as people who want to use this process is we break it down into different cases. And so if we were to drill down its cause, then solutions, then after that are cases. And cases are the part of the process where you debate, essentially, pros and cons. It's not just any pros and cons list per se, but there are mechanisms which weight the pros and cons based on their provability. So sourcing your pros and cons becomes a critical component of cause-oriented efficiency. And what we'll probably talk about in greater depth much, or very, very often, and later, not in episode 1, will be the complexity that makes this a methodology that will have to adapt and change based on the contexts for the different causes and solutions. So we'll talk a little bit about that a bit more. So let's say, okay, so we've talked about our example, which is climate change and the solution of solar panels, and that there are going to be cases for and cases against solar panels. So what is cause-oriented efficiency? So we just talked about what it is. It's a formula, basically. It starts at the top, which is causes, solutions, and cases. So the formula is essentially weighting the different provability of the factors. And the factors are going to be things like, is it effective? Is this solution like solar panels? Is it good for the environment? In the book, I discuss how there haven't been this many solar panel fields set up in grassy areas before. So there might be some unintended consequences there. And that's something that would affect the environment, which is a factor in the formula. And in the book, you could see the formula broken down, but essentially each factor is a human category of how this solution would hurt or help the human population at whole. And it's not just for humans, but for the sake of understanding the tool and the methodology, let's just say it's things that will help humans. So the formula is really starts after the solution in the case level. So you have to have cases for and against to really start to calculate the difference in the effectiveness or the efficiency of the given solution. So if you were to calculate the cases for and cases against with their related factors and weights, and again, weights are associated with the provability of the factor. So if we think again, just going to say a couple of things a few times and repeat myself so that it's a little easier to understand. But if you think about the solar panels having a factor of environmental damage, then you would weight that with the amount of provable evidence you have to say that that case against solar panels is valid. So the way that happens is all in the book. I don't think we'll go into detail today. Maybe that would be a different episode. We could talk about that a little bit more later. So that would be, what is it? It's a formula, and the score would be what's calculated from that formula. And the score really is what helps bridge the information gap. And let me tell you how that would work. And that would go into point 3 about what this is it's not only a formula or a score, but it has implications for a better society that we can live in. And the reason that is because think about, let's say you have to vote for some type of environmental protections in your county or your state or something like that, and you have not had time to understand all the solutions for climate change. So it might be nice to understand the solutions from a high level first with something like a score. And a score from cause-oriented efficiency would be very detailed and thorough using provable factors. So you could rely on this information at a high level to gauge how you should vote for that particular environmental protection thing. So that's just one example, and there could be many. And in the book, I talk about how there could be something as simple as standing desks for sedentary behavior, or also there was something for. Anyway, if you want more information, more examples, you can get the book. I do plan on having more examples in the book in the future, or a new book in the future. So what would help me is if you do have any questions, to please let me know, and we can go from there. So the implications for a better society using cause-oriented efficiency would be, if we can shorten that information gap by having a score, like an efficiency score that I just described, the implications would be that, well, if we can get everyone to participate in this and have a fruitful community and fruitful ways of thinking, and people can help each other by providing information and helpful debates and all that sort of thing, then what we would come up with are a better way to give information to the greater public, the general public, so that they could easily access and understand at whatever level they need to the effectiveness or the efficiency of a certain solution. And what I'll talk about in later episodes as well is the need for more definitions around the efficiency of a solution. Because even with a good score, there are some other factors that would come into play that might describe better what the solution actually is. And so some of that, as an example, might be in the realm of physics or something a little bit more theoretical, where provability is always a bit gray area. So a lot of the solutions for a cause might not necessarily be weighted in a way that could really describe obviously what the answer is. So let's move on to, after what cause-oriented efficiency is, we just covered that. Why do we need this? Why do we need to have something that helps us bridge that information gap? Well, for me, this is actually something I want to start using for my own benefit. This is something I want to put into practice so that I can learn about things that I don't quite fully understand. And not everyone would use it this way, but it certainly helps. It's sort of like a map of how to be thorough while you're learning about different solutions to causes. And not everyone that would use cause-oriented efficiency would be the type of person that would be contributing, but there would be people like me who find certain solutions that they want to investigate. And basically what I would do is just notate all of these discoveries along my investigation and figure out what the most provable answer or efficient answer is for a given solution, or cause rather. Most efficient solution to a cause. So in doing so, basically I have a map of how to thoroughly describe solutions and see if they will do what I need them to do for the cause, basically, to be resolved. Now, the reason this is important and why we need this is that if everyone did follow this and we had a way to capture all of those scores that were being added up, it would cut through much of the lack of information that we have about certain topics and really shorten the distance between someone who needs to know of a solution and also being the person who understands that solution. An example of this would be something like, let's say you get diagnosed with some sort of rare disorder. You don't know what the best solution is for your disorder to be effectively or efficiently treated. So you can go online and WebMD and those other places and try to figure it out. But there's not a doctor guiding you and showing you which medicines or treatments are the best for you, given what provable information is out there. So, and the other thing is also you don't understand the information even if you can find it. I don't know if you have ever tried to read through clinical trials papers or anything like that, but basically when you do, you could very well get lost in the language. It could take you weeks, months, or even years to figure out how this all works. So why do we need this? Why do we need this thing? So if we had a system like cause-oriented efficiency where there were interested people logging and coming up with these solutions ahead of time for people with this same example, like this disease that was just diagnosed, then you may already have a very well documented treatment with a efficiency score next to it. And if you're like, well, I see that this is the best rated solution for my cause, however, I'm not sure why it's the best, you could read through there and see which factors are coming into play that weight it as the best. And you can judge for yourself if that is the same scenario which you find yourself in and if it is a good match. I'm not saying that this solution would be the end-all be-all of figuring out solutions to problems, but what I do think is that it would drastically speed up the information being taken in to people that need that information when they need it, as opposed to learning it for having to basically become a master of that information before you can understand it in a way that most complex information sort of requires that up front. Heavy lifting now. So let's move on. I think that was a good coverage of why we need this. And I think really if we could have it in the hands of everyone and have as many solutions documented as possible, we would have a much more informed populace. And I think people would make, in general, better decisions, or at least have the capacity to. I think it's the belief of the people who feel as though individuals can take control of their own lives, that having access to information is a critical role of being able to be responsible for yourself. So understanding your world and what can happen in a cause solution environment is really, really important and not well documented in a way online or anywhere, essentially, that can be easily harnessed. So moving on here, the history of this idea really is my interest in information and technology, and trying to figure out how we can better ourselves using the technology that's out there. And I realized creating a website a couple of years ago that what I was trying to do for that website was basically curating interesting articles. And I realized in doing so, part of my belief structure is that while we do have, search engines that can help us comb the internet in extreme quantities, and we have AI that helps predict this and that, there's just not going to be a way for the thoroughness with the critical creative eye of a human looking at these complex information structures that are out there and mapping a way through them. So this is sort of a result of years thinking about cutting through the incoming tidal wave of information that is only increasing every year. And basically I've started with other projects and sort of come to the conclusion that the only way we could have really changed the way complex information is adopted by everyone is to simplify as much as possible and give it to as many people as possible. But simplifying always has this reductionist quality to it, where you lose some of the depth and reason, or in this case, provability, to why decisions should be made. Not just that they should be made or that people voted for this decision, etc. There's a lot of misleading ways you can read simplified information. So what I really like about this idea is that while it does have a reductionist, boiled down quality, it doesn't lose sight of the importance of the factors that are good for humans, plus the provability of those factors. Now, I want to cover a couple of things before we close, and I'm not going to stay too much longer. But what I want to touch on a little bit, and this is extremely important, is the idea of what is provable, or what you might call truth. And that's always going to be a hairy philosophical question that I will probably try to tackle in much greater depth. But we'll just leave it at this. There can't really be a fixed way to describe what's provable or what truth is. And the reason for that is it's always changing. And there's things, of course, that are consistent and have been consistent for billions of years, like gravity, until maybe we discover something else that's provable besides that. There's other things that change almost daily, like the best traffic route home or something like that. And while cause-oriented efficiency would not solve for probably your specific route home, it would probably need to take into account that there could be scenarios where provability has a time window like that. And maybe other things too. But for the general practical, pragmatic solutions that we can start to attempt to resolve now, I don't foresee these being issues worth holding up the building of this tool. So while truth is a continuous debate and how we should call that, what I'm saying is that basically towards the end, during the book writing process, I realized that there's always going to be some changing to do with this. And I think that even the formula will change. For instance, I think factors might change based on the type of cause it is. Like if it's an environmental cause, it might have different factors than if it is a medical cause, than if it is a political cause, and so on. And there should be some overlap in the factors and what is provable, but I know that there will be some relative quote unquote truth to the way that this is done. Anyway, I really strongly hope that everyone who has a chance to listen to this podcast will consider learning more about the project and consider helping out in some way. This right now is a completely not-for-profit endeavor. However, that doesn't mean that I've formed any legal entity with it other than just social media profiles and the like. So once we get things moving, we should probably, as a collective group of cause-oriented efficiency, think about ways that we can make this a reality. And I'm not sure what that looks like right now, but I would love to continue the conversation with you. The best way to get in touch with me is through the website, coefficiency.org. I have a Twitter account, which is COE for the number 4, everyone. So COE, number 4, everyone. No other social media at this point, but between those two things, you can contact me via email on the contact form on the website, find me on Twitter, and also you'll probably be able to subscribe to this podcast somehow and figure that out soon. Anyway, this has been David Blaine, the host of Cause-Oriented Efficiency and the author of Cause-Oriented Efficiency, the book. I hope you will join us for our great endeavor, and see you next time.